Hello, everybody. Sorry for the delay, but before I moved out a little late. So I'm going to present a project today, which I just did recently. Do you want to move down so I do not have to shout so loud? So I did this project recently for a company. The name is aerospace. It's actually a Russian company, not too far away from here, from Moscow. And they're building a new type of satellites, smaller satellites, to bring down the cost of bringing satellites into orbit around Earth, where they collect data about the Earth, and this data can be sold then. Many companies, many industries are interested in data like this. So with this new approach, they can reduce the cost for collecting Earth observation data considerable, so that new business models become possible. So this is one example of a company that took up a new business model. Geodata used to be very expensive, so if you want to buy geodata, you are very fast in the 5 and 6 figures amounts in euro, not in ruble, to buy them. And now they become better accessible for smaller companies. Until recently, only large companies or government agencies afford them. So this is a company that makes a new business model that's only one of many. So this is a one-man company that can afford to buy this geodata now, and they do consulting for local farmers. This was just recently, this was only possible for really large and rich farmers. Now a one-man company can do this, and they can consult small farmers about their crop, about their land, about the fertility of the land. So many of this data can be collected. So here you see a picture of how much greenery is there, what is the condition of the soil. So they're quite changing how the geodata business works now. So the Wall Street Journal just wrote about them, not just some time ago, but they wrote about them to introduce this new private enterprises in space exploration and Earth observation. And they founded a smaller daughter company in Munich, and this daughter company invited me to build a Drupal shop for them, where they can sell this Earth observation data. But this is also a new approach, which is enabled through Drupal and Drupal commerce and the connection of Drupal commerce, which you can do to open layers. Because in most shop systems, you cannot really connect something like open layers, where you can handle geographic data with a shop system. But Drupal has so many modules which you can integrate that something like this becomes possible. So here, just to give you a little more background, here you see the difference. So here you see how they build satellites. And this is the traditional way to build satellites. You do not see the whole picture. Okay. So this is the flying elephant you have. It's not really visible on the screen. So this is the dimension of the change that is happening now in this industry. And they also have their own private launches. So the smaller satellites can be brought into orbit with as a bypass if you start large satellites, but they're also beginning to do privately owned or privately organized launches in orbit. And all these are ways to bring cost down to collect this Earth observation data. So what is this to do with Drupal? So I wanted to build a shop where you can sell geographic data. And here you see an example of, we have water quality data of different types. So these are water quality data. We have many different kinds of data on this shop. And I integrated an open layers map into the product display. So I had to make a configurable product so that people can see for which area data are available. So here is the so-called coverage area of this type of water quality data. And then I give them drawing tools where they can decide for which area they want to buy geographic data. So the normal way, you have different product variants in Drupal commerce is that you build one product for each variant. So if you have the classical t-shirt example, but this is taken from, what was the name again of the standard Drupal Kickstart? So this is an example taken from Kickstart. So if you have three colors for this t-shirt, and you have, let's say, 4 sizes, small, medium, large, extra large, that means you must create 12 products. So this becomes already a problem if you have something like a pizza shop, where people can freely combine the toppings. So if you offer them, let's say, the choice of only 20 different topics, which is not that much for a pizza shop, and they can choose 1 or 2 in any combination, you end up with thousands of products already. So this doesn't really work. And in our case, where we must allow the user to freely define the area of interest, then you're totally lost with this approach. But as so often, there's a module for that in Drupal, which is the commerce, what is the exact name? The commerce customizable products module, which allows you to create individual line item types. So normally if you have a line item is defined as something that is in your shopping cart, that connects, that makes the connection between the shopping cart and the product. So that means normally a line item has only 2 pieces of important information. One targets, it's a pointer or reference to the shopping cart or to the order, and the other one is a pointer to the product. That's the only important information for a line item in Drupal commerce. So you connect your product with a certain order. So if you want to make customizable products, you can use this module to attach fields to these line items, and each field that you attach to this line item is also shown in the product display. So this way you get the connection between editable fields. You still do not have to do any coding, so this is quite a powerful approach to tackle that. You do end up with some complex relations. You have to define all of this relation. You must have the product display node to which product types it can relate. You must create an actual product display. You must create an actual product, and you must tell them how they relate to each other. And On top of that, you must create a connection between the product, between the content type for the product display and the new line item type. So if you do this, you end up with a product display that can only connect to one line item type. While here you can have a, here you can have a one-to-many relationship. So this looks a little complicated. You probably, if you want to build something like this, you probably can download this graphic from the Drupal, also from the DrupalCamp website. So if you want to rebuild this or get into more of the details. So once you have done this, you have a real product display where people can work with and where they can define the area of interest. And so in an ideal case, they draw within this coverage area I mentioned before, the area for which data are available. They draw a valid polygon to define for which area they want to buy data. But then, of course, you have to do some validation. They might draw an invalid shape, so this is not a valid polygon where you can work with. So you have to do some validation about the geometry of what the users draw. You have, well, it's not really. So you have to see that they draw inside of this area. If they draw outside of this area, you cannot sell them the data. So this is another kind of validation, of geographic validation you need to do. And you have to handle situations like this, where they draw part of the polygon inside and a part of it outside of your coverage area. Because if they do this, you want to cut it out. You want to cut out the valid part and throw away the invalid part of it. So for all of this, you need functionality to handle geographic data, to handle polygons. And this becomes possible if you use a Postgres database with the PostGIS add-on. So the Postgres database is just more or less functionality like MySQL, which most of you probably know. So first, I was afraid that maybe there are some incompatibilities, but this was not the case. So the system is running for quite a while now, and we have never ever had any problem with incompatibilities between Drupal and Postgres as opposed to Drupal and MySQL. So that works just fine. All you have to do is you define in the settings PHP which database you want. That's all. But if you add this PostGIS module to the Postgres database, so it defines geographic functionality for you. So it gives you a lot of functions which you can use for processing polygons. So each of this is a function you can use. So there are, I think it's almost 1,000 functions which you can use to process geographic data. That's all kinds of things you can do there. So you can integrate this database functions into your code to process these things, to do these validations which I mentioned before. But you must use SQL syntax. So there's again a module for that, at least for the first steps. It's the PostGIS module. Here's an example of how it integrates this database functionality to handle geographic information. So you see here, so it does a database query, but it's not really connecting to the database. you use database query syntax to process your geographic data and to get some results. So here they're checking, it's checking if this is a valid geometry. If you have the self-intersecting thing, which I showed before, this function will throw an error. We'll tell you this is not a valid thing. So, but the problem is, this PostGIS module is not really complete, and it does have some problems with error handling. You saw in the picture before, you saw that if you do the database query, it does catch exceptions. So if something goes wrong in the query, the thing does not crash, but it executes the code within your error routine. But some operations like this one simply do not have this error handling. So here you have the SQL code again, and if something goes wrong, then no error handling and the whole thing just crashes. So what you need to do is you override some of the functions that do not really work well or do not have error handling, and you add your own functions where you do the SQL calls for those operations which are not part of the PostGIS module. It's made easier by the fact that it's written not in standard code but object-oriented. So you can just override the classes and override the functions. So if you need a function that's fine but misses error handling, just override it and complete it. And if you want to add something, which I did here because it did not have a function that told me if two areas are intersecting each other, so you just add it to the functionality. So with this you can easily extend the PostGIS module. So once I accomplish this, it's easy for me to write a complete validation function for the drawn area of interest. So I just add the element validate to the line item field, which I want to in this case it's the map which I want to validate. I want to see if the customer draws something valid, and then I call the different functions which I need. First I check if the drawn area intersects with the available data. So I make some transformations, because if you have something drawn on a map and it depends on how far you are away from the equator. Just if you draw a line on a two-dimensional map of the planet Earth, which is, according to new theory, a ball. So drawing a line of a certain length close to the equator means something very different than drawing a line far away from the equator that has the same length. So you have to do some calculations, and then you are able to calculate the price for the drawn area and show it on the product map, on the product display. But you still have some challenges to tackle. So this open layers editor sometimes gives you data that are not really correct. So normally you expect something like this. This says it's a polygon, and here you have the coordinates, and these are two-dimensional coordinates. So this is the first coordinate, then you have a separated by a comma, etc. Sometimes, if the customer used the drawing tools with a lot of changes to the geography, just gives you back something that does not look as it should like, or it gives you back something like this. So you have the same coordinates here, but you have a lot of points added to it, and it does not really give you only a polygon, but it stores the polygon and the points in a so-called geometry collection, which is something that can be used as some container to several geographical objects. But you might notice, if you look closer, that if you look at this coordinate, it also appears up here. So it's just for some reason it doubles the information. So you just have to throw that part away and make it a polygon again, and then that's it. Sometimes when it should deliver an empty map, if the user presses the submit button without drawing anything, it should normally say this field is empty, but sometimes it does deliver you a geometry collection with nothing inside. So these are things you have to handle. You have to analyze the string that comes back from the PostGIS editor or from the OpenLayers editor, and have to figure out if everything is correct, and if not, you do some error handling. So there are more things that can happen to you if there is an error message. If validation leads to an error message, the whole map disappears, which is not, of course, not really nice, especially when the error message relates to something in the map. So if the customer drew an invalid polygon and you give him an error message about that, please correct your drawing, and the map disappears, he might be slightly confused. So this is because there are some incompatibilities between Drupal caching and the OpenLayers module, unfortunately. So if you ever build something like this, you should do a rebuild. You write for each field that can create a validation error, you create your own validation function. If this validation concerns a field, you validate yourself. So you write only the Drupal rebuild. If the field, like for example, if you define a numeric field, Drupal itself checks if the input, if this in this field is numeric, so it will do its own validation. But you have to check the same things, because you understand Drupal would display an error message. And to avoid the map from disappearing when Drupal displays the error message, you have to determine if this will happen, and you have to do your own Drupal rebuild form. And this Drupal rebuild form forces Drupal to rebuild the whole page, not from cache, but to rebuild the whole thing, because for some reason, when Drupal tries to rebuild the form after giving out the error message, for some reason it misses the OpenLayers map. I'm not really sure why. Nobody has ever detected this error. It's an error in the OpenLayers module, but obviously nobody has ever had this problem before, so it seems most people do not use OpenLayers for drawing. Does not really not many people use OpenLayers for drawing pictures which are validated afterward, because otherwise somebody else would have detected this problem. So are these 5 minutes including the time I lost because I could start on the map? Okay. Anyway, so and there's another thing that can happen to you you have a tool for the user where he can correct already drawn polygons. And now, if this creates some kind of error message, the map does not disappear, but this can happen to you. So the user may have put a lot of effort in drawing his area of interest, very much detail, but due to another incompatibility between caching and open layers, all the points will be lost, and it will zoom in totally, so that you only see one point anymore. So this is the first point that has been drawn, and everything else is lost. So the only way I could find to solve this was to completely turn off caching. So when you take the hook form and completely turn off caching. So this has some other disadvantages, because things like uploading files. If you need this, everything that has to do with displaying JavaScript on your page will fall apart without caching. So you have to be careful about this, that if you do that, you must avoid having JavaScript, Drupal JavaScript on your site. Okay, but if you do this, you can process the whole thing, and when you have calculated the price, all you do is you write a rule that the self-calculated price is taken to the line item and not the price that was defined in the product. Because you cannot define a price when you create the product. And then, yes, then you have it, then your people can buy. So your customers can buy it, and you have a nice website where you can sell geographic data. So you see now it can be put into the shopping cart. So I'm almost finished. So I just want to say with some coding and using modules, available modules, some flexible way you can create quite sophisticated websites, I think. And if we have time, now we can answer questions. Yes?
You have like subscription, right? There, 3.5 and 6 months.
Sorry.
You have a subscription plan there, 3.5.
Yes.
Is the only scheme how you sell it?
This is because the satellite circles the Earth, and it comes over certain areas in certain distances of time. So some are passed every day, some are passed every 5th day or so. It depends on the orbit of the satellite. And so you get, for some areas, you get regularly new data. And for some products, it's interesting to have a subscription to get data from this area of interest every time the satellite circles around the Earth. And sometimes it's not so interesting, sometimes it's enough to have just one spot. For example, with terrain profiles, which are very interesting for telephone companies, because they want to know what the area looks like, so they know I place my antenna here and the next antenna there. So for broadcasting mobile phone data. So of course this does not change a lot. So in these cases there are no subscriptions available. But in the example of water quality can change quite quickly. And in this case, it's interesting to have subscriptions for a certain time.
So basically, you have several types of sales. You sell by subscription as well as one sale.
Sorry.
You have several types of sales, so you sell by subscription.
Yes,
By subscribing your plans as well as one, like you sell one downloadable file. Or like
if you have a subscription, you get this data regularly. Every time there are new data available, you get a notification, and you can download the data somewhere. And if you have something that's more stable, where you do not need subscriptions, you do them not.
I have some questions. You work with default geoid VGS 84. It's like a Mercator projection.
Actually, I don't really know that. Or maybe I just did not understand you right.
Because I also work with satellites shots.
Yes.
And sometimes I must transform in our projection, not VGS 84, to an hour.
Yes. So
And
you
I get some bugs with Postgres.
So
I can calculate the correct area. And also I use this in my project to fight. Our company makes site to fight with forest fires in
So
Russia. And
you have this projections, and each projection has a certain number, the so-called SRID. I'm not really sure what this stands for, but each area has its own SRID, and you have a transform function in Postgres, and you just call it with two parameters. You call it transform, and then you give it the original geometry, and you give it the old SRID and the new SRID, and it will transform it for you.
yes, but sometimes I got bugs with calculator when I transform from one projection to another.
Yeah, there are some difficulties about this, because if the areas, so if the area that is drawn is very, very large, it's sometimes not possible to do this transformation. So if it goes across too many different original projections, you might have trouble to transform it. In this case, if you really have to do it, try to avoid it, but if you really have to do it, I think all you can do is to cut it into several pieces and transform all the pieces and then put it together. But if you can, you should just try to avoid this, I think. So what we did is we changed to Google projection, which is able to handle this, but you lose some accuracy of the data. The Google projection does not have this problem, so it can transform everything to everything without even doing a transform call. It's 432 projection 4326, I think it's called. But you lose accuracy. If you do this, your customer gets only roughly what he painted.
You talked about 100 functions in Postgres.
Actually, it's much more. I think it's 1,000.
Oh.
And not all of them are really useful for everybody. There are also concerns three-dimensional things which we do not need.
Are they stored procedures?
No, there are. As far as I understand, it's not something like stored procedures. It's just a database function which you call like any other database call you do. So it follows the SQL syntax: select, blah blah blah, from blah blah blah, and so on. Just like we do it in SQL. So it's a bit strange to call database functions to do purely more or less mathematical operations, but that's how it works.
What is the reason to select Postgres instead?
So there were not really that many alternatives. I also took a look at geophp. So this is an extension of PHP. which gives you functions to do similar operations with geographic data. But one thing is it's very badly documented. You find documentation about many of the functions it has, but they do not even describe the parameters you have to pass to the function. There would be a lot of trial and error to do that. To do that with geophp. And I missed some functions. Maybe this is due to the bad documentation. But some things I just could not do with geophp. Maybe it exists, but how can I know that if it's already documented? So I decided that this was just too time consuming to figure that out. And it was pretty well in stages possible.
So you use Postgres because of geographic.
Yes, well, actually only because of this. This was the only reason, because it has very good geographical functions.
The name of your website,
Website.
It's a store dot.
you can write down as a short.
Don't describe it.
Can you read this? Is this large enough? Wait, I have a password. Store at claudio-ag.com. But I can actually call the real website. So here you can read the URL. Compared to the guy before me, I still have a lot of time.
That's pretty interesting. Thank you very much.
So if you have